like slumber to see the truth, for the truth will make us free. You are listening to Waking Up the Masses Radio.
New intro. Deliverance on acid. This is what I like to tease my partner Bob Brutus about. Bob, welcome to the Waking Up the Masses program today.
Hey, man, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well compared to the last few weeks, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, good. Glad to have you back in commission, man.
Oh, I'll tell you. I may still cough now and then, but it's not near as bad as it was. I had that walking pneumonia crap, as they call it. So, wasn't bad enough to be checked into the hospital, but close. A few more days. If I would have waited a few more days, I might have been there for a while. So, but all is well and good, and we're back on the air with our new show and our new website. And thanks to Bob, we got that website looking really nice.
Oh, hey, man, and we also have we've got our Android app, and as soon as we get our iPhone app up and running, which should be in the next couple of days, we'll have a page up on the site where people can download that.
That'll be awesome.
Plus, the site's already mobile. It's already mobile access, so I've already got that ready if anybody wants to tune into it with their mobile device.
Yeah, and that's important these days because with all the iPads and iPhones and Androids out there, that a lot of people do their surfing on their phones today.
Yes, sir.
They become mini computers.
So Mr. Storm, oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, I was just going to say our guest should be calling in soon. It'll be Miss Susan Lindauer, and she has got quite the story. If you've never heard it before, to start the show or the interview with her, I think I'll just go ahead and let her tell her story and what happened to her after she was a CIA asset back in from about 92 to 2002, roughly. And then what happened to her when she was charged with trumped-up secret charges on the Patriot Act.
She was an asset dealing with ass hats.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it as any, I guess. But she was working with this CIA, which I call crooks in action, but I think I actually stole that one, but anyway. And I believe that's her calling in now, so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Susan Lindauer up to Waking Up to the Masses. Susan, welcome to the new show.
Hey there, it's great to be on, Johnny. Great to be back.
And my partner, I should say, Bob Brutus, is also with us.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, nice to talk to you again. You know, I just said that you were a CIA asset dealing with ass hats.
That would be an accurate description of the situation, I would have to say. And what I saw firsthand is how even the best intentions can make a whole mess of things. When 5 or 6 different crews of people get to meddling, and we're all mixing around, and we're all proactive, you see, and so we're all interventionists trying to move things in our own direction, and boy, can we make a mess of things, right?
Well, boy.
That's man's proclivity.
That's right. We sure can take a situation, and we sure come up with some convoluted schemes, and we each contribute a little part to the mess, and then we just ratchet it right up.
How true that is. I've actually been watching a series on Showtime since I get it free for 3 months, by Oliver Stone, calling The Untold History of the United States. And very interesting stuff on how he goes all the way back to, well, the Revolutionary War on forward, but he focuses part one series of it is on the revolution in Iran in 53, which is actually orchestrated by our wonderful CIA and the British.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We've been making a mess over there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed, we sure have. And we brought the Islamic forces to power. Mm-hmm. We also propped up the terrible Shah of Iran, who was genuinely a monster. So we have created the monsters. We have created the paper tigers that they have to tear down in order to that legitimately must be torn down. And then we put into power new tyrants who then have to be torn down. And it's like what you're seeing today in Syria. Now, I have to tell you that I am opposed to U.S. intervention in Syria. So a lot of people, right off the top, they get really upset and they say, but Bashar Assad, the Syrian government, the current government is so vicious and so savage towards its people. And I want to caution everybody on that, because what you're actually recounting is the deeds of the father. Hafez al-Assad was a monster. He was a cruel bastard. He was very proud of this fact. He really vicious. And his son, Basil Assad, was groomed to replace him. And his death. To give you a sense of how how even these bastard leaders are controlled by factions within their community. Basil Assad was assassinated. We all believe this. This is just kind of, everybody understands it. It was a mysterious car accident on a road with no cars, and he was traveling to the airport and had a major car accident where he was killed. Sort of like Princess Diana dying in that strange situation that nobody could really explain. It was the same thing here. And what had happened was he took on the drug cartels. Syria is a major drug export transit center. Mm-hmm. And so Basil Assad had taken on the drug cartels, and they killed him. And no matter how powerful Hafez al-Assad was, these people had no compunction taking out his son, his beloved heir. And this opened the way for Bashar Assad, who had been trained as a doctor, an ophthalmologist in London. He was never supposed to rule. He had a very different perspective on leadership. He wanted to open up the government for the people. And so he had a very Western viewpoint. He married a journalist. He is not anything like Hafez al-Assad. He's the exact opposite. He's very secular, very progressive, and it is totally inaccurate to paint him as a tyrant. He was not supposed to be the leader of Syria, so he was not groomed for this position. He was not taught the tactics of tyranny.
He's like Saddam Hussein. He's like Saddam Hussein. He's a moderate Sunni leader.
Well, no, Saddam Hussein would even be more conservative than this guy. This guy lived in London. He was sent to, he was the second son, so he was sent overseas to school. And so he was mixed Saddam Hussein never mixed in the West. He only stayed in Iraq.
Right.
Bashar Assad spent most of his adult life in London, at Oxford University, University of London, the Royal College of Medicine in London. So, I mean, he had a very proper upbringing that was very anti-tyranny. Okay, and nothing that we are describing in this man is remotely accurate to his background. I cannot stress this enough. The United States has created a phony persona in Bashar Assad, and Bashar Assad is nothing remotely like what you're saying he is. Mm-hmm. It just even if you have to go back and look at who he really is to know how he became what he is, and he's not torturing people, he's not killing people. And we are in danger of repeating this legacy of cutting down these people and cutting down the wrong leadership, and then imposing new tyrants like the Free Syrian Army, the Islamic radicals, the Muslim Brotherhood. God Almighty, what craziness is this?
Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
The same people that shot at our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan are the ones that are fighting this proxy war.
Yes,
I mean,
that is factually true. See, that's the problem. It's factually true. This is not like a similar group of people. This is the identical individuals. And so I just cannot understand. I don't know how they are rationalizing this. I know that I can assure you there is a big fight in the intelligence community to stop them from doing this. And I know that there's pressure to back away from the Free Syrian Army and to cut them out because but it's like the CIA groups that are fighting one another, jockeying for positions. Some of them are pushing them forward, some of them are pulling back and trying to get rid of them. And we can only hope that the wisdom bears out.
Right. Well, and here I want to ask you a question about this Syrian situation, because here I listen to the Hagman report quite often, or I used to anyway. I've been offline here for a few weeks, but he has a connection in the Department of Homeland Security, fairly high up. I mean, not too far away from the president. And his code name is Rosebud. Now, Ambassador Stevens, as we know, back in September 11th, was assassinated there, as along with a couple ex-Navy SEALs who were his security detail. Now, they had asked for more security prior to this event happening because they were afraid of something like this happening. But he had a meeting with, according to this source of the Hagmans, with the Turkish ambassador.
I heard that too.
And then they were told, through the Russians told him through the Turkish, hey, knock this crap off, because apparently what they're doing, or what they were doing, was running weapons of Gaddafi's, from small arms all the way up to chemical weapons, to the Syrian rebels.
Yes.
And
yes, that's what I heard too.
And that Stevens was taken out by a organized group of hitmen by the Russians. Now, I disagree with you on. That I disagree with you on. But anyway, the point was that this was a big gun running operation, is what Stevens was help facilitating.
Yes.
And that's eventually why he got taken out.
The Russians told, yes, it was. There was a big dinner with right before the killing. There was an dinner with the Turkish ambassador. They were discussing how to ship the arms from Benghazi up to the Syrian rebels. And the Russians were telling them to stop doing it, but that does not mean the Russians killed them.
Right.
The thing you have to understand about Libya, and this is all blowback. Those of us who are educated on Libya, who really are honest about Libya, we understand what really is going on there. But the corporate media has told so many lies to the American people that they are not capable of acknowledging how badly this has gone. But in fact, Libya is Libya is a wildfire burning out of control at this point. I will give you a little bit of information here. I was contacted by people who support the rebels. The rebels who are now in power, the NATO forces, the NATO Libyans, who are in power. And they were hoping. Now this is how twisted Libya is, and I want you to listen to what I'm saying to you. Before the election, the NATO Libyans contacted me, who was an opponent of the war, and they said, "Hey, Libya's going to burn out of control until the West sends soldiers into as peacekeepers. We want Obama to be pressured to send U.S. soldiers into Libya." Okay? And so they are trying to get the U.S. into Libya because they have no way. They require. They're going to collapse otherwise. Okay, they are collapsing right now. They're not holding anything. They have no. These are all people who were expatriates, and they've shot their way into town, and now the people who have been living there for 40 years hate them. These
now you're
people
talking
are
about the rebels.
The rebels, the NATO rebels who are now in control, have disintegrated into gangs and militias.
Okay.
And they are thug forces. They go around carjacking, murdering, kidnapping people. They find bodies dumped on the streets of Libya every day. Every day.
I saw in it.
Yeah.
I saw an interview with you where you talk about constant beheadings and constant that these guys do castrations.
Yes.
Castration.
They actually.
I saw that when I was watching you. I was like, don't say that.
Yes, they actually do that. These people are so cruel and vicious, but these are the Al-Qaeda fighters that we brought in. And so what's happening is this very twisted, convoluted thing in Libya right now where the NATO people who we support, the NATO rebels that we put into power, are desperately trying to get the United States to take a more activist, interventionist role, because otherwise the Libyan people are going to hunt them down and kill them. They have said to me, I've heard these people who backed the ouster of Gaddafi have now said that they would give anything to have Gaddafi back. One guy passed, and they begged me. They actually contacted me through the Lockerbie Scottish representatives tied to Lockerbie. And so they actually went to the Europeans, and before the election, they asked me to support them in this. And I was like, I'm not going to support you, no. I was like, never in this lifetime will I support those people. And I'm not going to support having U.S. soldiers go into Libya and act as a ground force policing Libya. But what they have said is that Libya will continue to disintegrate. They have said the war will go on for 100. They're saying the war will go on for 100 years. This is quickly becoming a cycle of vengeance, which is exactly what we told you it would be.
Right.
The tribes attacking one another, killing each other back and forth, and this is what Libya was before Gaddafi. And this is tribal justice, and a lot of people died, and there are a lot of prisoners and a lot of kidnappings. And so if I kidnap you, you kidnap me. If I behead you, you find someone in my family, you behead them. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And believe me, they know who each other are. And so these guys were hoping that after September 11th, the United States, after that attack on Stevens, they were hoping the United States would take aggressive action and come in there and crush all these gangs and thugs. Mm-hmm. That's how badly this is misunderstood. Because, you're absolutely correct about how the timing played out after after the dinner with the Turkish ambassador and how they were running guns to Syria. But the motivation for the attack and the fact that it happened at a safe house, really, in my mind, there's real question as to whether this was done by our own allies.
Well, see, here's another question I have for you then, because what I understand, and this is coming from the same source, was that Bill Clinton was very upset about this whole thing because Hillary ended up taking a lot of heat over why she didn't provide more security for him. And Bill was essentially telling her to throw Obama under the bus and resign. And because Obama was the one who said, no, let him go because dead men tell no tales. Now, this is this is coming secondhand, obviously, but so Hillary all of a sudden now has a severe concussion. She gets the flu. I mean, it all seems kind of bizarre.
I think she did have a concussion. I think she had some kind of stroke.
Oh, okay.
I do believe she had a stroke.
Well,
I think they're downplaying what happened to her, but I think that's real.
Okay. But my point, my point is that it seems like they keep changing the official story all the time.
Yes.
First it was this video, then it was they had asked for security, they didn't ask for security. It goes back and forth, back and forth. But I do believe that they were running weapons over into Syria, or at least trying to. And that Steve paid the price for that.
Yeah, definitely, they were doing that. And the thing that's important to remember is, if they were, I agree with you that they were running guns into Syria, which means that the Al-Qaeda forces would have appreciated that. They would have been happy to see that continuing. Mm-hmm. Stevens was doing the work that Al-Qaeda wanted him to do.
Right.
Disgusting as that is. Stevens was doing work that Al-Qaeda valued. Therefore, it's not Al-Qaeda that killed him.
No,
okay?
No, I don't think it was.
It was, I believe, and this is why I think that nobody will talk about it, I believe that it was forces supporting the United States coming into Libya who killed him. I believe that it was our friends, our allies, who deliberately killed him because they were hoping that it would be like a false flag that could be blamed on the Al-Qaeda forces. But the Al-Qaeda forces were actually benefiting from what Stevens was doing. Mm-hmm. The Al-Qaeda forces were very pleased that he was sending the forces to Syria because they need the weapons. The Al-Qaeda forces are so dirty and ugly and corrupt and vicious and hateful, they'll take weapons from anybody. And this is the Middle East where the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and they make the craziest alliances, and none of it makes any sense. And it's like if you have a brain, if you're a sane person, you cannot by definition understand them. You must be a crazy person to understand. And if you are sane, then you're automatically disqualified because these people are so crazy that they actually do this. But the thing to understand about Libya, and I know this from having dealt with Gaddafi. Mm-hmm. The Libyan diplomats, and I dealt with them. Let me remind everybody, from 1995 until 2003, I was the designated CIA, the designated point person from CIA and Defense Intelligence covering Libya.
Right.
So I knew these people up close, personal. These were I dealt with Yemen, Lebanon, Egypt, Iraq, and Libya, and Malaysia. And Libyans, of all the Arabs, the Libyans were the most ferocious and the most treacherous. The thing that we think of them as being our friends, no Libyan would ever say they are friends of the United States. They hate the United States. Listen, I'll be honest with you, and it even hurts my feelings sometimes, okay? Though we're not supposed, when you're CIA asset, you're not supposed to have quote feelings, because you're not supposed to get it's not like you're not supposed to get your feelings hurt, okay? But it does kind of, even if the Libyans who would consider themselves my friends would never, under any circumstances, do anything to help me. If I needed a Libyan to do something for me, and I went to somebody who had been my quote friend for 8 years, who knew that I had stood with Libya against the sanctions, and I said, look, Megrahi didn't do it, he's innocent of the Lockerbie bombing, and I took bullets for these people standing up for truth, which was Libya's innocence of the Lockerbie bombing. The same people who would know that I took hits for to stand up for this truth, they would attack me. They're the first people who would attack me. These guys sharpen their knives, and they hate the West. And I cannot underscore this enough. Even if the Libyans who know how much I did just for the cause of truth, okay, I would never lie. And because see, this is the thing. I regard terrorism as a very serious matter, of course, and so I would never lie and say you did it. If Megrahi did not do it, then Megrahi should not be in jail for doing it. And in this case, he was innocent of Lockerbie. Lockerbie was done by Syria and Lebanon. It had nothing to do with Libya at all. Okay, so I was willing to stand up for them. Even so, these guys would attack me. They would be the first. You see what I mean? They're treacherous. They are completely untrustworthy. They are completely unreliable as allies. And if you think that you have a friend, and Stevens thought he was a friend of the Libyans, oh, hell no. They hated us. I would be a better friend of the Libyans. But Gaddafi would not even give anything to me. He would never do anything for me, ever. Even though I would be somebody they had known for years. They do not. If you're a Westerner, you're an outsider, and they do not like outsiders at all. At all. No. The first rule that I was told by a diplomat who said to me, we don't have to tell you the truth on anything. The only people we are responsible. He said, look, you must understand this about our culture. We are only responsible to our families and our clans by marriage, our tribal alliances by marriage. Those are the people we fight to defend, are the tribal alliances by marriage and birth. Other than that, then we have the nation, and the nation is far away from us. The nation is something bigger than us. And so we are less loyal to the nation. We are first loyal to our tribes. But after the nation, you are very distant. You are far away. You're a foreigner. You have nothing to do with us. He said, I don't have to tell you the truth. I don't have to do anything I don't ever have to keep a promise to you, because you're not part of my tribe. The only one I have to honor my promises to is to my tribe. And that's why Gaddafi was brilliant, because Gaddafi played all these tribes together, and he made them feel like they were all part of intermarriage. This is like an intermarriage system. He did a brilliant job.
He played some of the African tribes in other countries.
Yeah.
Bring them into the fold.
Yeah.
And Gaddafi,
exactly.
Would you not, let me ask you this, because you're probably more in the place to answer this question than I would be, but in my opinion, Gaddafi was really set up. I mean, this guy, you want to talk about an African Union? Who was going to lead the African Union?
That's right.
Who was going to lead it? This would be Gaddafi. Look at what he did with his country.
He did wonderful things. I have to tell you, he really did wonderful things.
Yes, ma'am.
He was somebody that he was fiercely loyal and protective of all his tribes. They were all his. He called himself the brother leader, and that is you notice that is a family term. It is he first among equals, but he always insisted that he was not running Libya, that all of them together were running Libya, and he had all of the heads of all. I will tell you, this is pure democracy. There are approximately 2,000 Libyan families, and these 2,000 Libyan families would send their heads of their families to congresses, and the congresses would make the decision. That Gaddafi would pose the questions, and then the Congress would decide, and Gaddafi would implement whatever they decided. But he was not a tyrant dictator like they're trying to say. He had achieved a perfect blend of local family rule over overlords for his society. And I'll tell you something. When the United States went in, we stupidly, foolishly, idiots, thought that we could eradicate that. We would bomb it, we would destroy it, we would impose a General Assembly population over the people. And so we killed them. What ended up happening, not that we did it, but our allies in Libya, we thought that we were doing something very, modernist. But the Libyans who had been outside the country knew that they were going to have to kill off the whole leadership of the society. So they did. These stupid bastards went in there and they started assassinating all the leaders of the families, so that all the fathers all the fathers, all the heads of the clan leaders across the board. They were killing them off. Well, what do you think happens in a situation like that? You kill my father, I come back, I kill you. The son comes back. The son has an obligation to commit vengeance. It is now a blood debt. The blood debt must be paid. And so you have all these families that have had these murders in their families, that the heads of their families have been murdered, and now it is the responsibility, the obligation of the junior members of the family to vindicate, and the vendetta culture takes over, and now you're just swimming in blood, and that's why Obama, that's why CNN doesn't get the story. Because CNN, Obama has lied to Americans saying, oh, Gaddafi was an evil man, oh, Gaddafi was a tyrant, oh, the Libyan people are so glad he's gone. No, they're not. And the whole society's in turmoil.
They did it with Mubarak also, and now they're doing it with Assad.
Yeah.
Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein. I remember you saying that the Iraqis actually invited the FBI to Iraq to investigate things.
Yes, they did. They invited the FBI to send a task force to work in the country doing terrorism investigations with authority to interrogate witnesses and make arrests. Yes.
And then that was all rejected so that we could go to war. And all of these things were, Colin Powell lied his butt off essentially in front of the UN. Yes. In order to justify this war.
Absolutely. That is absolutely true. Yes. And Colin Powell was, I know this because this is how I became a threat, because my Colin Powell lived next door to my CIA handler. And twice in January of 2003, at the beginning of January and at the end of January, I took Colin Powell's papers showing the peace option that was on the table, giving him an analysis that the Iraqi exiles were exaggerating claims on weapons of mass destruction or outright falsifying them. I said, never trust them. They're completely dishonest. They're terrified of going back to Baghdad without the U.S. soldiers backing them up, because otherwise they'll be slaughtered in the streets. They're absolutely hated. So that's what happened. So, yeah, it's a tragedy. It's just, but we're making a huge mess in Syria. Libya is going to be a disaster for the next 100 years, and I really do believe that this Benghazi thing was orchestrated by America's allies, because it was not done by Russia. Russia warned them to stop sending Libya Gaddafi military supplies to the Syrian rebels. That's true. But the Al-Qaeda, always remember who benefited. The Al-Qaeda fighters desired for Stevens to do this. The Al-Qaeda fighters wanted Stevens to send those supplies to Syria. It was the U.S. allies, the NATO allies, the new NTC crowd, who are so frightened of trying to run Libya without a U.S. presence there to hold them in power. They want to be puppets of the United States. They have no chance of surviving unless Washington shows up. They might as well. In fact, they would be smart. They may have no chance of surviving. They are likely to be killed on the street unless Washington shows up. So these people are looking at, how do we stay in power? They have no friends. They have no allies. These vendettas are taking over, and they now have targets on their backs. I hear gleeful reports of assassination attempts on them coming out of Libya that are just rejoiceful. Ha ha! We scared that bastard. He'll think twice. Even if we didn't get him, we got his bodyguard, or we got his brother, or we're showing him that we're fighting back. And they have arrived home, not only to find that there's no support, but to find violent resistance, deep, deep, deep hatred of them. They are now completely painted as puppets of the West. Inside Libya, they're hated as puppets of the West, and they don't have the protection of a puppet.
Now,
So that's what they're looking for. So I think they did it. I think our own allies did it.
I wouldn't disagree with you without, after all that's happened over the years, especially since 9/11. But let me ask you this. Isn't it true that Gaddafi came clean about some chemical weapons programs he had going on there at one time? And
that was in Tarhuna, and this is the other tragedy. Gaddafi had no chemical weapons or nuclear weapons.
Right.
It has been argued by some people who, in the Arab community, who do believe in these weapons, who want to justify these weapons, that if Gaddafi had those weapons, if Gaddafi had been developing as he was accused, then he would have had the capability to fight back against NATO.
Well, see,
and he would have been able to use the weapons for his own country's protection.
That's what I was wondering, because I heard that he had come clean about any programs that he did have in development, and because he wanted to be accepted by the West.
Yes.
And then, being that he came clean, he expected to have better relations with the U.S. and hopefully have
sanctions. And he did have better relations for a long time.
Right. And then the thing that spooked me was, after all this, weapons funneling was going on by Stevens, was that, okay, well, what if he had some type of small arsenal built up, and he came clean about it, like they said he did, and then those weapons found their way over to Syria, and then the rebels used them, making it look like Assad used them.
Yeah.
And therefore, Obama has said, look, if Assad uses chemical weapons, that's the red line in the sand.
Exactly.
So that's what I'm afraid of, is a false flag put on by our Congress.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing to know. Gaddafi did not have those weapons.
Okay.
Gaddafi never had those weapons at all.
Okay.
He did have he was extremely well, he had a lot of firepower.
Right.
He had a strong arsenal of firepower. Okay, he definitely did. He had that. But he did not have chemical weapons. However, the rest of what you said is completely true, which is that the rebels have been able to access chemical weapons probably from the United States and Turkey. Our allies have been supplying the chemical weapons to the Free Syrian Army, but it's not coming from Gaddafi. The other weapons very likely are coming from Gaddafi, but not the chemical weapons. And it is definitely true that Assad's the Free Syrian Army is using chemical weapons and trying to make it appear as if Assad has used them first. But we are now onto them. So, thank God for the internet. Even if we don't have CNN doing it, we've got. The rest of us are okay.
You posted a quick post on your website talking about them using these radical groups and claiming that it's Russians in Syria.
Yes, they are. What's happening is the Free Syrian Army. This is really. These people are very sophisticated and deceitful. They are actually recruiting mercenaries from the Ukraine and Georgia, and they're trying to encourage these governments to. This is not government forces, excuse me. These are private mercenary individuals, and they're recruiting them to go to Syria, and they've actually. What is shocking is the Free Syrian Army has built fake villages, that look like bombed-out villages. This is unbelievable that they could have done this. This is how sophisticated and crazy these psyops are. The Free Syrian Army, backed by the United States, has built fake villages that look like they've been bombed out. And they are recruiting mercenaries from Russia, from Georgia and the Ukraine, who look like they're white Russians, to come in and to have a fake war, not a war, fake shootings back and forth that they can make it appear as if the Russians are joining the Syrian government and then producing casualties, and it's crazy stuff, and then trying to discredit the Russian government as being indifferent, as being like a broker for peace.
Mm-hmm.
A broker for peace, because if the Russians are engaged in the war themselves, then they can't really be brokers for peace. So but this is how cunning these people are. And we've got photographs of photographs. We've got videos of the Free Syrian Army bombing mosques, firing mortar fire at mosques, using chemical weapons. And making it try to appear that the Syrian army has done this, that Assad's forces have done this. So a lot of the war crimes are actually being committed by the Free Syrian Army. No question. No question at all. They're very scary people.
Well, and like I said before, this is just nothing but proxy Al-Qaeda people that have worked for us, actually probably all the way back to when the Russians invaded Afghanistan. Some of them go back, some of these relationships go back that far, maybe even further. And these are the same folks that were shooting our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now we're supporting them. I mean, none of it makes any sense. And if the American people on a whole actually knew what was going on, boy, I think we'd have an impeachment tomorrow of a lot of people, not just Obama.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that we are in grave danger on this point, because the people who are coming to power, they're trying to the Obama administration is trying to declare the Muslim Brotherhood, okay, the Muslim Brotherhood of being a moderate, responsible, rational force of pro-democracy that will respect women's rights. They do support Sharia, they're saying, but they're not going to be so radical in imposing things. That is completely balderdash. The Muslim government, the Muslim Brotherhood, believes the only way to have a law system is to force Sharia law on every Islamic citizen, and that every law must be coordinated with the Islamic religion at its truest level. And so you have the Salafists who are dominating the Muslim Brotherhood, and they believe that all depictions of society must have a pure Islamic focus as well. They're the ones who are taking over Tunisia and Egypt and trying to take over Syria. And it's a very frightening situation. We're putting into power people who are completely radicalized, and it's very dangerous.
Yes, ma'am. The Muslim Brotherhood is about as Muslim as Federal Express is federal, and their founder that founded it in the 1920s, his name Hassan al-Banna. He was a 33rd degree English Freemason. He was very high up in the mystery schools over there in England. Came back to Egypt, worked with other individuals that were sort of like this and founded this. This is not Muslim. See, that's what really irritates me.
No. I think they are. They are Muslim, but they're also bankster oriented. They're radical Islam, but they're bankster oriented, and that's what makes them acceptable to people like Obama.
Radical Islam, they revere, even though their followers, the most of them don't know it, radical Islam actually revere it's like a nephew of Mohammed as being their leader.
Yes.
And this would be the Shiites, who are the majority of the radicals. And that's when this whole big radical change took back with the Ismailis. It's over 1,000.
Well, let me just caution you on that, because you just said Shiite. Ironically, and a lot of and this is not an offense against you, but it is a caution, because in fact Hezbollah is the Shiite political party, right? And all of us think of Hezbollah as being very conservative. But in fact, the Muslim Brotherhood is mostly Sunni, and they are mostly Salafists. And as it turns out, the Salafists are far more conservative than the Shiites. The Salafists make the Shiites look liberal. The Shiites, like Hezbollah, has women who are educated, they hold jobs, they put their children in daycare. Some of them don't even marry. They don't even marry at all. But the Salafists are the Saudis and the Qataris. And so the Salafists are the real radical, dangerous conservatives.
The Salafists and the Ismailis actually are where, like I said, over 1,000 years ago, that we had the whole radical idea came through. Yeah, I was reading on my own broadcast the other day quotes from the Quran, and I always say, I care not about becoming Muslim, nothing at all. But I hear people say, oh, they want to kill the Muslims, they want to kill the Christians, they want to kill the Jews. Well, this is a latter-day, not latter-day, it's been a while back, but it's a latter-day philosophy. Whereas if you read in the Quran that Muhammad reveres the Gospels of Jesus and the Torah,
that's true.
The Torah of Moses, and where they say the only Jews and Christians they have a problem with are those that are following what I call the mystery schools, the pagan worship, and not really following the real religion. Those are the ones they have a problem with. So it's just sort of upside down. But a Muslim's a Muslim and a Christian's a Christian. I understand that. Johnny and I talk about plenty of Christians that they use the C word.
But the thing is, let me just tell you something, because this is very important, because you're hitting on something. We need to be really clear about this. What the United States has done, and the Obama administration, this is extremely important to understand. We are backing a Sunni Islam, a Sunni version of Islam. The Muslim Brotherhood is Sunni. Okay? Those are the Salafists, who are radical conservatives. But because in our crazy, ignorant Western mentality, we think of Saudi Arabia as being an ally of the United States, they are the most radical conservatives. The most Islamic fundamentalists are the Sunnis. But because we say, oh, Saudi Arabia is an ally of the United States, therefore we are going to attack Bashar Assad because he's Shiite. We're going to attack Lebanon because they're Shiite. And in fact, the Shiites, who are the Hezbollah is a moderate. They are not... The reason that we think of Hezbollah as being conservative is because Hezbollah fought Israel.
I'm talking about in their origins, because I got a local friend.
No. Don't get stuck in the origins. Let's focus on what happened.
I'm talking about the different party, which they weren't Shiite, they were Shia in the beginning, but I got a good buddy that he moved back here. He went and lived in Indonesia for a while. He's a Shiite Muslim, and you would not find, like he told me, there was a little bit of problem with him killing the goats over there at his wife's family, and so he wouldn't harm a fly on anything back there. And the majority of Muslims that I know personally are Shiite Muslims, and they, except for one, he knows that I like to occasionally have a couple of beers. He won't let me come in his house. Now I am suspicious of him. Now he's a Sunni. He's told me before he's a Sunni. But I'm talking about the original origins. But in the original origins, our Democratic and Republican Party were different things also.
Okay. Let's just focus on this. Let me explain this, though, because this is really important. That what we're doing, Obama is embracing the Sunnis because the Sunnis, who are Obama isn't, because you got to understand what's really happening here. Obama is embracing the Sunnis, who are the Muslim Brotherhood, who are the Salafists. All three are the same. Sunni equals Muslim Brotherhood equals Salafist. These are the radical conservatives. They are the pure Islamic fundamentalists. But we are supporting them because they are backed by Saudi Arabia, where women are not allowed to drive cars and not allowed to vote. Okay?
But he did.
Then hold on. All of these.
Got him. I'm posing questions because you know more about this than I do on the political level. Mubarak was Sunni, so why would he take out Mubarak?
They had no choice. Okay, listen. They are supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. Gaddafi was Sunni. Okay, but the problem is this, but Gaddafi and Mubarak are secular. The Muslim Brotherhood wants to have a religious leadership. The good question about Mubarak. Mubarak was a secular leader. Gaddafi was secular. Tunisia was secular. Okay, something's crinkling.
Oh, that was me. Sorry.
No, I just want you to know I'm not arguing with you because Johnny will tell you and I've talked to you about it before here. My education on this goes back to ancient days.
Okay, but the thing is, what we have to understand is what Obama's doing right now. You don't have to go back to ancient times.
You help me put together more of the story, so that's why I'm asking you questions.
Okay.
We're connecting the dots here, man. It's a picture. It's
sure.
Picture paper.
Absolutely. But the thing is, all the governments that are being thrown out are all secular governments. And the United States is only supporting the Sunnis, who are the radicals, and the Muslim Brotherhood. Then the reason we are opposing the Shiites is because of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is far more moderate than the Muslim Brotherhood, but Hezbollah fought Israel. And so the reason we oppose Hezbollah is not because they are conservative radical. In fact, they're secular, but they opposed Israel. And so that is the only reason that we're against them, is because they are against Israel. But what we don't understand is that the Islamic radicals that we're putting into power, they are also anti-Israel. And they are more likely than not to start the next war with Israel because they are using us to come into power, and they have no intention of actually embracing democracy or any sort of opening of value system that relates to us. They don't want to protect women's rights. They don't want women to have an education. They don't want women to hold a job. Hillary Clinton would be thrown in jail if she lived in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
You know, she really would. They would have no pay. They hate her. So they will tell you anything that they have to say to get you to do what they want. But that doesn't mean that they actually believe what they're saying to you.
Right. Like I said, I was asking because you actually connected some dots for me. Okay. Because I do tons of historical research. And that is, even though I compare it to modern day times, that is really where my mind sets as far as the history goes. And do you remember that movie that was out years ago? It was called Kingdom of Heaven.
Yes.
Saladin. Now, see, I can tell you anything you want to know about Saladin. Saladin was a very, 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 very humanitarian person.
Yes.
If he came and conquered a place, he'd let you go. He's like, here, you can leave. You just can't stay. You can march to the sea, try to catch a boat, but you can't stay here. He was a benevolent conqueror. But he was a Sunni. Now, Saladin fought with these, when I talk about the original, what you call the Shias, these original Salafites and Ismailis, they constantly, and these groups grew into, which grew out of a university in Cairo called the Boat of Cairo. They were a group called the Assassins.
Yes.
Now, they constantly tried to kill him. They constantly tried to take him out, and he almost had them beat down, and he capitulated. See, that's what I'm saying. He capitulated. You see, the radical force at that time, they now become, the radical force of which, take over the name. He started doing what they said. And you can even, even though it's made by Hollywood, you can see in that movie where the radicals, the Shiites, they're saying, you promised us, which lets you know he's already made a deal. He's already made a deal with these guys. So no, that, like I said, I wasn't arguing with you anything at all. This helps me connect the dots a lot.
Yeah, and it's really important because we have a very twisted idea of who it is we're supporting, and one of the things we don't understand is that the West is supporting Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's vision of Islam is the most radical conservative of all.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was in Lebanon last year in March. And they confronted me on this. They said, "You realize, don't you?" And this was a very good very productive conversation. They're like, "We are more liberal, more progressive, more secular than anything. And more tolerant." Lebanon, for example, poor Lebanon. Oh my God, they went through a 15-year civil war, and they have come out the other end of it. And the war just ended in 2000, which is not long ago. 12 years ago is not. There's 15 years of war where they had bombings and suicide attacks and neighbor killing neighbors, shooting each other out. Oh, Lord. Everybody alive remembers the war. Nobody was untouched in that war. They have come out of that war with a deep tolerance of each other. They show profound respect for each other. Christian and Islamic people together work side by side. All the different sects, they have rebuilt their society. They're very proud of it, and justifiably so. That is the worst war. It was one of the worst wars in history. And they fought it with Israel, and then they were fighting it internally, and the Palestinians were fighting the Lebanese, and the Israelis were fighting the Lebanese, and everybody was killing each other off. And they're like, we are the moderates. You should be backing us. Yet, because of the historic fight between Hezbollah and Israel, the United States refuses to have any sort of relationship with Hezbollah. And we have totally balkanized this thing, and so we're tying in with Al Qaeda, of all places, of all people, who are the crazy Sunnis as opposed to embracing these guys, and we're making hideous mistakes.
Well, that's my question is with the Muslim. Now we're shipping more arms and tanks and everything else over to this Muslim Brotherhood. What is Obama trying to gain from this? Because they have come out and said that they're not going to honor the treaty with Israel, as far as the Muslim Brotherhood goes in Egypt.
That's right.
So I just don't. This logic is completely backwards to me. I can't make sense of it at all. Unless Obama's trying to make Sharia law the law of the land here in the U.S. I mean, some people suspect.
It is the most profound irony that he is going to make Sharia law the law of the Middle East. Mm-hmm. There's no question when Obama's through recreating this whole scenario that radical Islam will dominate. And radical Islam that is determined to go to war with Israel and that hates the United States. And so we're going to see blowback coming out of all these countries, Egypt, Libya, Syria. All of these countries are going to support Iran.
Right.
The Iraqi government is now solidly in the camp of Iran.
Mm-hmm.
We have not made things what we thought it was going to be.
No, and they did not greet us as liberators either when we got there, as Bush and Cheney used to say. But so, in essence, we're creating our own enemies as if to facilitate World War III. I mean, is this what's playing out behind the scenes?
Yes.
That's what I'm seeing here.
Are we on for 1 hour or 2 hours?
We've got 2 hours today.
Okay, we do. Okay. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if we had to if we were like coming to the end or not. Okay. Great. Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. So
I think we are looking at a World War III scenario.
I think we are too, because I've seen headlines now where the president of Egypt, I can't remember his name, but essentially the head of the Muslim Brotherhood has been meeting with Ahmadinejad over in Iran and trying to reestablish relations between the two countries, because they really haven't had any since Mubarak was in power. And even prior to that, I think since the Shah left Iran, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
But now they're facilitating new political and trying to facilitate economic and even military ties. So if we want Iran and Israel and the whole Middle East to blow up in our faces, we're sure heading in that direction, don't you think?
We are absolutely heading in that direction, and let me tell you why. Because as we've noted, all these governments that the United States is now throwing out of power, they have all something in common. Sunni or Shiite, they are all secular, and they have been controlling Islamic law. They have restricted the use of and application of Islamic law in their societies. And so the Iranians, now that the secular governments are being murdered and imprisoned, and people who were just going about their own business, who never killed anybody. You got to realize the governments that are being thrown out of power, as soon as they're out of power, the new it's like I always think of it like that song by Pete Townsend, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." I can't sing it all. I have a terrible voice. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Yeah. Okay. That's what's happening. They are all saying, "Oh, look at Mubarak. He imprisons his enemies. He tortures people. He does all this." As soon as they get into power, they're doing exactly the same thing. They are rounding up all of their political opponents, throwing them in jail, torturing them, detaining them without trial, refusing to let them hold a job. Civil servants who have never in their lives committed any crime against anybody. They're being thrown out on a patronage basis.
So look at the idiot. See, this is what disturbs me even more, because my primary concern is this country. I watch what's going on because it affects us, but my primary concern is this country. Look at the majority of sheep. Look at the majority of sheeple in this country that cheered it on. I saw people put little posts like, "I'm walking like an Egyptian." Oh, really?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But didn't people do the same thing, Susan? Did they not do the same thing when they saw the video? When they got to go online and see the video of Saddam Hussein being hung and all the radicals around cheering it on, and they cheered it on too.
That's right. And that's the ugly thing of this. Yeah, that's the ugly thing about this. And I have to tell you, I'm ashamed for all of you in the anti-war community who are supporting the Jasmine revolutions, the Arab Spring. Isn't that such a funny word, the Arab Spring? Oh, we're ushering in democracy. And what you see is the liberals, the progressives, who are backing war, who are backing revolution, thinking that they're going to bring in democracy and they're going to mastermind the new society, just like George Bush thought he was going to do in Iraq. You see the liberals doing to Egypt and Syria and Libya exactly what the conservatives, the radical conservative, the neocon conservatives did to Iraq, for the same mistakes and Afghanistan. And so you see the same mistakes playing out, but now it's the liberals doing it. And I'm offended by this. It's very dangerous. But Iran is seizing upon this change too, because Iran is being very clever. They recognize that these are Sunnis who support Islam. And they're coming in and they're saying, we support Islam too. you can be Sunni, have your Sharia law, have your interpretation of Sharia. But we support you because you're bringing God back to the people. And so the Sunnis and the Shiites are brothers against America. And you will see, just like you see in Iraq, you're going to see in all these countries that we think that we are putting in an anti-Iran force. But the Saudi government is going to fall too. What we don't know, because our corporate media does not tell us, there have been marches and protests in Saudi Arabia, just like there's been everywhere else. And the Saudi government is buying off all of every constituent group that they possibly can. They're throwing money at everybody trying to stop a revolution from taking place. But it's only a matter of time before they go too.
I was going to say, I just read an article here recently where the monarch of Saudi Arabia is very old and could die any day. So then what happens? Saudi Arabia essentially erupts into civil war, don't they?
I think so. I think they do.
And then watch oil prices skyrocket.
Well, I think that the real danger is that the BRICS nations are already in Iran. The Iranian sanctions are backfiring on the United States because what we call the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Those are some of the largest economies in the whole planet. Okay, they have now devised a way to get around the United States and United Nations sanctions on Iraq, which are imposed by Europe. Western Europe is in gross decline, plummeting fast, and so they are now, the BRICS nations are now buying Iranian oil with gold. Mm-hmm. And they're now, gold is not the U.S. dollar. A gold-backed currency is now the preferred currency, and that is pushing the United States farther into decline than most Americans yet realize. Absolutely.
And that was partly what Gaddafi was planning, was to back his dinar with gold, wasn't it?
Yes, and to have an African currency backed by gold. Libya has a huge gold reserve, and Gaddafi was very fiercely nationalistic, though he was pro-Western. This is the thing, he never attacked Italy, he never attacked France, he never attacked the United States. So he was no direct threat to Europe. However, he did support China. He did give China large oil contracts, and he wanted to have a gold-backed dinar that would make the African, like right now Africa supplies raw resources, but they really don't finish, you know what I mean? They don't have production. They supply the raw materials, which are then developed further in the West and utilized in the West. Mm-hmm. So by having a gold currency, Africa would get a higher value for their raw resources, and that's what upset the euro. That's what did it.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you there. Is that why China has gone into Afghanistan with all these mineral resources?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And China has a very different approach in Africa and Latin America and even places like Afghanistan. They don't come with bombs. They come with engineers. They come with teachers and doctors because they have some of the best educated people who need jobs. And so they have a surplus of educated people, and they take them and they say, we're coming as partners to help you develop your society, to help you build up your society, whereas the United States sends drones and bombs. We're coming to help you build bridges and dams and hospitals, and they have they're labor intensive. So they have, they don't have a lot of cash, but they have labor, cheap labor.
So essentially, China was making all these inroads, and we just essentially blew it all up, in Libya at least.
Yeah. And the gold-backed dinar. Yes.
Right. Yep.
And that sweet crude that they got there underneath the soil of Libya.
Yes.
Some of the purest oil in the world.
And the cheapest to harvest, to pull out of the ground.
And did not Gaddafi? He distributed the wealth. A real distribution of wealth that's underneath your feet to the people of the oil reserves. Yeah,
he did. Gaddafi was wonderful. He made sure that all the 2,000 families of Libya each prospered under his regime. Everybody got free housing. And his family, Gaddafi said that his family would only have free housing after the other families got it. So he said that his parents would get it last when everybody else would have it first. So he made sure that they knew that they were the priority, not himself. He was not profiteering from this. They had free education, free university stipends, free university scholarships, free medical care. Every married couple received a $50,000 marriage subsidy so that they could build a house and start their families. Everybody received, I believe it was $10,000 per child. Or maybe it may have been $5,000 per child. It was either $5,000 or $10,000 per child. All of that is now gone. And it was nobody in Libya is getting anything now. It was paid for too. It wasn't jacked up by, up in by the debt borrowing or getting money from the Federal Reserve, was it? No, that's right. By the resources, and this is amazing. This is. I told a buddy of mine locally here. We were talking about Castro and Che. I said, what the liberals in this country have made them out to be, but they're not. Gaddafi actually was. Yes. But he did it on a scale of not taking down the rich like they were, because you could still have money there. Yeah. You could still do these things. Not anymore. Hey, we're the country that bombs the hell out of you just to give you freedom. You got to love it. Yes. Exactly. And Gaddafi really did it, and I'm glad you make that point, because all of he was a socialist, but he actually delivered what he said he was going to do. And Hugo Chavez, all those people are really taking care of themselves first, and then then the people are like, one for me, one for you, two for me, one for you, one for all of you to share. I get one, you get all of you get to share this. So it's kind of 50-50 divide. The people get 50-50. That's right. So, Susan, in your first book, we talked about, obviously, we've covered a lot of what, you covered in your first book, Extreme Prejudice. But correct me if I'm wrong, were you starting work on a second book? I have been sort of playing with a book on Lockerbie. Which is not going. Which I'm thinking of even making it fictionalized, because there's so much fill in the blanks that. Oh man, your life would make a great novel. Yes, that's definitely right. It sure does. It's like, oh my goodness. Don't forget though. But what I found, though was you're doing it. Don't forget when you're writing the book. You got to talk about how you called in and waking up the masses to inform the public. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, what I found was that I started writing again, and then I really realized that I needed a break. And so for the past 3 or 4 months, it's been 6 months now. Originally, this was just supposed to be a 2 or 3 month break, but it's become like a 6 month break. And I'm just, as of my New Year resolution was to get back into the game again and start working again, because what I found, you guys, was I was so tired. I was just emotionally exhausted, and I just couldn't. I couldn't. I had done so much. I went straight from from the 9/11 tragedy to the Iraqi war tragedy to my arrest on the Patriot Act for 5 horrible years, and then straight to writing my book, and then straight to promoting my book. And so this 10 years was just very, very, very intense, and I just needed a break. I had to emotionally I had to recoup my energy. And now I'm waking up every morning saying, okay, I've got to do something. I've got to be productive again. But I really need. But the end of last year, the second half of last year, I was so wiped out. I just couldn't do anything. Everybody was like, "Where are you going? Why have you disappeared off the charts? You've just kind of all of a sudden you're gone." And I'm like, I have to recoup my energy, or I'm just burning out so badly.
I understand that, and I haven't gone through near what you've gone through.
No, not at all.
Yeah, well, I tell you though, I'm really glad that you guys called me, because I want to start doing. There's, like I said, there's so much to explain about the whole Syria nightmare, and we've got to stop this war in Iran. And I think there's going to be a false flag to pull the U.S. into war with Iran. And I am just waiting to see this happen. I think it's going to be a great tragedy and we've got to stop it. And at the same time, we've got the BRICS nation. The UN sanctions on Iran are a European phenomena, and everything that we're doing is supposed to prop up the euro and the dollar. But what we're doing, our strategy is backfiring, and we're actually raising Iran. We're raising a gold standard in competition with the U.S. dollar. We can't compete against a gold standard because our currency doesn't have that much value. And the euro is in real trouble. So I think that, I really do worry about what's coming next.
Well, Susan, if I could ask you a question.
Sure.
And it's sort of off the subject, but it's on because what's coming next. About the whole Second Amendment argument going on in this country right now. What's your opinion?
Yes. Oh, boy. We have talked about oath keepers before, and I think that I think it's really scary that we see all these local police announcing that they're being trained in how to take on militias and how to institute martial law. And how they would enforce martial law so that they could have a clampdown if there's any economic unrest in the coming year. That's really scary to me. What do you guys think?
Well, I would tend to agree with you, and I've spoken, Randy Shannon, who's a frequent guest on the show, she's actually spoken to law enforcement people in 2 different communities, in Iowa and in Florida. And there are plans on the books for this stuff that you just mentioned, but that a lot of these local law enforcement and even some federal, she's talked to U.S. Marshal as well, are saying, and I've talked to some military that are nearby me, and I've talked to some local sheriffs and deputies who are saying, look, we've got wives and kids too. We're not going to do this.
Good.
And the rumor has it that, we have scattered around the country, and I know for a fact they're in Colorado, Montana, and Arizona, United Nations troops from all over the world, from the Pakistanis to the Germans to, and the Russians are definitely training, the Spetsnaz forces are training with our forces in Colorado and Alaska, that it'll be the foreign troops' job to try and disarm us if it comes to that. If they go for full confiscation. So the scary part is like this Connecticut shooting could have been a false flag. Same with the Colorado shooting. Greg Evenson is another internet radio host, and he's a retired law enforcement guy. Mm-hmm. Spent years in law enforcement. And prior to that, he was in Vietnam. And coming from a law enforcement perspective, he said none of this makes any sense when you look at Colorado, especially the Colorado shootings. He was very vocal about that. What about all these eyewitnesses that have seen second and third shooters in some cases?
Yes.
What's going on with that?
Strange. What's up with that? Where are the second shooters? Why are they being disappeared?
Right. And why was this guy in the Colorado shooting in particular just sitting in his car waiting for law enforcement to come get him? And why was there a blood trail going on the other side of the theater and someone getting into a getaway car and taking off? And then why would he explain to the police that he had a very, very sophisticated booby trap explosive type setup in his apartment?
Because now you're seeing the transformation from, well, let's just say, Johnny and I, you and I are near the same age. Remember the 80s and the 90s of the drive-by?
Yeah.
The drive-by. You know, people always talk about mind control. They say these people were mind controlled. Well, I agree. We're just seeing the downfall of the family in this country, just like it was in those gangbangers that used to go by and spray a whole crowd of people, and there were several of them. But now the media is so that they are so involved that they make a big nonsense of everything, and then I'm even wary of the media, the alternative media, the things they say when they come out about this. But really, in the end, it's all, I always talk about the after effect. Everybody wants to know about 9/11. I think it's good to do research on that. Everybody wants to know about Sandy Hook, and they want to do research on that. But what happened, just like your case, Susan, 9/11, I've watched all your videos. I've loved your analysis.
Thank you.
Thermite and everything. But what really affected you on 9/11? It was the Patriot Act and the fact that you were incarcerated under this.
Yes.
Sandy Hook. I want people to investigate this and keep investigating it, but we got to be vigilant and see what is on that horizon that they want us to go up to, which is really the whole, oh, God, they have guns. And this was a bad thing.
Well, I mean, what you're saying about the two and the multiple shooters, and in what's so bizarre is it's so obvious there was more than one shooter. It's clear there was more than one shooter. I mean, in both cases, the original reports are always that adult eyewitnesses, not little 5-year-olds. I can understand if a 5-year-old gets confused, but adult teacher eyewitnesses are saying that there's two shooters in Sandy Hook, and adults in the movie theater in Colorado are saying that they watched in the first row. Witnesses in the first row say that there was somebody who got a phone call and went over and opened the door on the side of the movie theater and let James Holmes come in. And then the immediate reports are that there are two shooters. We know that in Sandy Hook the guy didn't have the semi-automatic weapons that were used in the guy. He did have weapons on him, but they were not the same kinds of guns that killed most of these kids. Mm-hmm. There's a different type of gun that did the killing. So how is it that the people are dying using a different type of bullet?
Well, getting aside from all of the YouTube videos and analysis, all you got to do is go look at the police reports. Watch the videos that were going on there from mainstream media, and you can see the discrepancies. You can see all the discrepancies there that are going on.
Yeah.
And then you had Anderson Cooper going off about this blogger from Florida who is a professor at the Atlantic Florida University. He's a professor there, and he was just asking questions about bull shootings. And one of the questions he asked was, okay, why is there not video like you had in Columbine, for example, in 1998? They showed video on the national news of those two guys going and shooting people. And there were cameras, there was a surveillance system installed in that school the year before the shootings happened. So he's wondering, well, where's the video? Why are they not showing that? Why are they not able to corroborate it with the video?
Yes.
And yet,
good point.
And so Anderson Cooper was going nuts about this guy blogging that it may have been a false flag, yada, yada. But then in the same sentence, in that same news clip, he kept saying, but we don't want to give these bloggers credence. We don't want to give these bloggers any credit. We don't want to bring attention to them. Well, then why are you so desperate to discredit him?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Why?
Well, see, that's it. The corporate media is frightened of. It's interesting because it's like Piers Morgan bringing on Alex Jones. They are of course, naturally, the blogs and the internet media are reaching a critical mass. We've already reached a critical mass. We are a direct we. I'm on the side of the we that's the internet media. We're reaching a critical mass, and we can take them on. We challenge their control of ideas at this stage. We're big enough that the public has more sources of news. We all know the corporate media is watering things down so deeply, so that they're propagandizing to us, and we're no longer fooled by their propaganda. We've got other sources that are ready to shoot their ideas down, and so they really look at us as a threat.
Yes, absolutely, and I. And that whole Piers Morgan and Alex Jones thing, I wish Alex would have toned it down just a hair so that he didn't come off as because what they'll do is they'll take snippets. They'll take snippets of that and say this is what all internet bloggers are about.
I agree. I agree. If he,
I
you know,
agree.
I'm not a particular fan of Jones, but if you're going to do that, it needs to be done because Piers Morgan was completely not Piers Morgan. Because watch him with Ben Shapiro or Larry Pratt. He's an attack dog.
Right.
He's an attack dog. And what did he do? he's like Muhammad Ali when he would let people come in and just punch on him. He was doing the ropey dope, and he'd say, "But can we just not have a conversation?"
Yeah, trying to look like he was the most reasonable one in the room, and that his ideas were so. He was almost like a little frightened of Alex Jones, who was so rabid and so aggressive, and it's like, oh my goodness, these internet people. He's like, it did discredit, it did harm the internet cause, I think.
Even though I'm not a fan at all of Alex Jones, I can tell you that if I'd gone to an interview, because I will give, I'm not going to knock someone where it doesn't need to be done. If Piers Morgan, if I'd gone in there, I mean, I would show my toes. Now, I wouldn't have said anything about a boxing ring or anything like that.
Yeah.
I would. The wording he used, fine. He wanted to talk about the revolution and everything, but But I understand why he did what he did. But now I also understand that the media loves to give us the Hegelian dialect.
Yeah.
So I am suspect. But at the same time, I can tell you that if it was a real media and I had to go on with this guy, I would be on my toes so much. And Johnny can tell you, I get temperamental. We've had troll calls. The troll in, I have no tolerance. So if I was to go before this is jackass, pardon me. If I was to go for this jackass, I would people would be like, oh gosh, put Alex Jones.
Yeah, that's right.
So I understand how they manipulate people and everything, and I am, like I said, I give the opportunity for any reality to surface and see what's going on here.
Yeah.
But they used it. They used it, and he's still using it. That little bloated Brit, he's still using it over and over and over again.
Yeah. Well, and he's also using it, and it's also more effective because he's presenting himself. He had Jesse Ventura on too, and he's showing that he's willing to bring on these guys. So he's making himself more relevant that way, as opposed to Anderson Cooper, who refuses to deal with them, and these other the Rachel Maddows who like to say, and Chris Matthews and all these MSNBCers who want to say that they support the liberal blogs but no real hard-edged news blogs.
Right.
That like MSNBC will bring you on if you're a HuffPo. HuffPo. Blah. They'll bring those people on. No, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure there's sometimes Huffington Post is legitimate.
Hey, we can say it. You don't say it. We can say it. We can say it even better. Huff hose.
Yes. The Twinkie news, the Twinkie blog.
But getting back to these shootings, it's a blatant false flag attempt on our Second Amendment, in my opinion. And now we're going to use children to do that. I mean, of course, it doesn't surprise me. Look at 9/11 and all the different people, different types of people that died there, so that we could have our wars in the Middle East and Afghanistan. Yeah. And of course, you know as well as I do that we knew that was coming.
Absolutely.
How many months did you say that you got wind of it?
We knew about it I learned about it in April and May from my CIA handler.
Okay.
So of course they had to know about it before they told me.
Right.
But we had plenty of 6 months lead time to get everything ready. Motive and opportunity, and every police officer will tell you that a crime requires motive and opportunity in order to execute it, and we had both in play.
And it all seems to play out to the same type of scenario. Like in 9/11, for example, we had most of our Air Force over on the West Coast in Nevada training for a similar type of scenario.
That's right.
And same thing in the Sandy Hook now is starting to come out, that they had law enforcement officers in that state and in that area training for a school shooting type scenario in a different area. So it all seems to follow the same type of pattern, no matter what kind of false flag it is.
Sort of like the London bombings.
Yes.
Well, 2005 when they had a drills going on for a bombing scenario, especially having to do with the subways.
Yes, exactly. That's right.
So
good point.
It's their pattern is starting to get almost too easy to spot. It's become, I shouldn't say it's a joke because people have died with this stuff, but to demonize it's not even an assault weapon, even if it had been used. Okay, an assault weapon is a fully automatic belt-fed machine gun. Okay, that you carry in a squad. I've trained with them. I've used them. I mean, I know what assault weapons are. A semi-automatic rifle is not.
An assault weapon is what you see in the movies. Rambo jumps out with trigger goes down. You don't have to pull it anymore. And what they're calling assault weapons are guns that you pull the trigger over and over, just like if you were out in the woods hunting or doing target practice.
Yeah.
And I've had people ask me, "Well, Johnny, why do you need an AK-47?" Well, it's not that I absolutely need one, but it isn't really a real AK-47. It has fire and safe, and I kind of like the fact that I don't have to reload every 5 rounds. It makes it easier for me to pinpoint and sight in the weapon.
And it's a much better weapon to use if you're actually exercising your Second Amendment, and we have to form these militias to oppose this tyrannical.
Well, now listen. Let's talk about that, because in fact, what we're looking at is forming militias, but we have the government forming a militia too, and it's really not fair to think that we're doing this in absence of provocation.
Right.
We have 200. Okay, correct me, guys. You'll know exactly how many it is. 200 million hollow point bullets.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, it's in the billions now.
Yes, I think it's more than that.
Okay, it's billions. It's 2 billion. Okay, it's 2 billion, and that means you can kill. I read somewhere that they could kill every American citizen 4 times.
Yep.
Okay. Seriously, they could have these snipers with these 2 billion weapons, 2 billion hollow point bullets that only have a single purpose. They could kill every single American citizen 4 times. Why?
And the Social Security has them, the Weather Agency has them. I'm wondering, are people going to get pissed off because they're predicting the weather wrong and they need to protect themselves?
Yes.
A bunch of old people,
the National Oceanic society is supposed to be the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association or agency or whatever the heck. They're supposed to be dangerous?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then Department of Homeland Security now, for the first time ever, it was not quite a year ago, they were running a drill at a Social Security office somewhere in Florida, that there was a terrorist attack at this Social Security office, okay? And that was the first time I'd ever seen it, but apparently more people are seeing more and more of these vehicles now that said Federal Police Service, FPS. Where did they come from? I mean, it was the first time I'd ever seen a vehicle that was labeled that way and had a big badge on it. So now we have yet another bureaucratic organization that stems from the Department of Homeland Security. So who are these rounds meant for? They're certainly not meant for Al-Qaeda because we're their buddies now, fighting with them over in Syria.
Yes, yes.
Well, check this. We're locally we have a, one of the producers up north of me in Tennessee. Just about 20 miles, man. We have one of the producers of Caterpillar. Now, do you know what they've been producing over the past few years? FEMA vehicles.
Government expense, yes.
Down here in Georgia, it's not necessarily a staging place, but it's where they have them. It's not a government place. But these are FEMA vehicles. A lot of them have camouflage. And this is who they've been producing for. And they were right before. It's funny. They're one of those businesses. Everybody in 2008 took a dip. They didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
They didn't at all.
Right.
They were hiring. You could go on the local newspaper up from Chattanooga, and you could see where they were still building these things. They needed workers.
And now the TSA, if you think they're only in your airports, think again. They're on your roadways. They're called Viper teams. Now, Bob, you would know them a little bit more about this than me since they were doing it in Tennessee here last year.
What do you mean Viper teams? What?
Yeah.
Well, like I used to take, my dad is, he's an Agent Orange victim. And, the main, he's actually doing real well. He moved down to the panhandle of Florida and started doing some deep sea fishing. So he's actually not healthy but doing well, but that's beside the point.
Oh, that's good. Well, listen, that's very important. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it is. But I used to, when he was up here, he lived in Georgia too, but the main VA hospital was Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Just a little bit, it's where MTSU is. It's just a little bit south of Nashville. And, we would go up there and you would see these, what Johnny's talking about, these TSA Viper teams all over. It's sort of after you get about 60 miles north of Chattanooga, all the way, and that's about 120, Chattanooga to Nashville, about 120 miles. So about halfway, you start seeing these guys everywhere. And they go under the guise of ICE, but they're not ICE agents.
Oh.
They're not ICE agents.
Wow.
So that they're not ICE at all, and they don't claim to be.
Okay.
But that since we have you got 75 and up to Nashville's 24, they split off. Well, 75 going up through Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. They always called it back in the 80s. They called it the cocaine corridor. So they use this as a means, saying to pull people over. They use it. Oh yeah, man. The truck stops here locally. You'll constantly hear about on Highway 75. This big bus, that big bus. I always wonder, well, what did they not bust? It's even bigger. I went and supplied, but
yeah.
But yes,
wow.
What Johnny's talking about, it is. And my father, because he got in a condition at that time where he could drive himself, but it wasn't really advisable. So like I said, he's doing better, tons better now. But it wasn't really advisable for him to be driving. So I started driving him up there. I would take, and sometimes we'd have to go to a hospital up in Nashville. We'd go to Vanderbilt, but usually it was right there in the VA. So he told me, he said that's TSA. That's
wow.
Yes.
So he could pick them out.
Well, you could see the vehicles. You could see them sitting there on the side of the. And he would see them when they would pull people over and do random stops. I didn't see too many Mexicans in there.
Wow.
Reason, but yes, Johnny's right on. They've been doing this for a while. Now, in my state, Georgia, I haven't really seen it as much. Knock on something that, let's see, book was made from wood. Knock on wood. But I'm sure.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so we have TSA Viper teams that essentially molest you the same way on the roadways as they do in the airport.
Well, I won't even fly anymore. I can't stand to fly.
I bet not. I suppose, do you get singled out more now that you've come out with your book and you've been kind of a whistleblower?
Actually, you know what? I always they won't put me on a no-fly list. Knock on wood. This is kind of funny. When I first published, right before I published Extreme Prejudice, it had not come out yet. I was invited to Japan for a pre-release book tour, and my father and my friends were like, my family and friends were like, Susan, you're going to they're going to put you on a no-fly list. You're going to be in Japan, and you're not going to be able to come back to the United States. And my father, who is very conservative, who does not believe in this conspiracy stuff, I will have you know, he called me and he said that if he got that he was very worried that I was going to be stranded in Japan, and that he wanted me to know not to panic and not to get upset because he and my stepmother would buy me a boat, a boat ticket. And if I couldn't fly on an airplane, they'd make sure that I could come home on a boat. And he was convinced that I was going to be stranded out there in the middle of the ocean somewhere, 6,000 miles away from home. So.
Well, there was an individual at, I believe he was on, I can't remember if it was Steve Quayle's show or if it was Evenson's show, but anyway, he's got a book out, and I wish I had the title in front of me, but I'll email it to you when I get it. But essentially, they pulled him out of the line. He was going to fly over to Oregon. His job was training canine dogs. And so he was a guard dog trainer, essentially, because that's what he had done in the military. So one day he gets pulled aside and told that he's been put on the no-fly list, and he couldn't figure out why.
Wow.
And there's a process you have to go through if you want to appeal it. And so he went through the process. The FBI did question him at the airport, however.
Oh, my goodness.
And they said, well, essentially, even if we did know why you're on the list, we couldn't tell you. So,
Jeez.
So he went through the process, and, of course, it was ruining his business. And he was applying to figure out why they had him on the list. To make a long story short, about 2 months later, the FBI called them and said, hey, we've got some good news for you. We might be able to get you off that list. They met with him at a hotel that was about the halfway point between their office and his home. And they told him, look, you're Muslim, right? Yeah. So what we'd like you to do is spy for us. And infiltrate some Muslims.
No, come on.
And they were going to pay him cash money to do it, to be a paid informant. And off the book.
I'm sure you're telling Susan something that she's already heard before.
Well, it is heartbreaking. Man.
And he said he wouldn't do it until he said, well, okay, so you're telling me you're going to pay me in cash off the books. IRS won't know about it. Well, then I want it in writing.
Listen, somebody tells you the FBI says you don't have to report that to the IRS. Be afraid.
Oh, yeah.
The FBI is just dirty as, I mean, that's dirty as hell. Oh, we're going to pay you. You don't have to tell the IRS any. Oh, sure, go right ahead. Tell them the FBI said so. Boy, man,
So when he asked for his attorney to be present, and so to look over the documents they wanted him to sign, they backed off and rescinded the offer. So they said, well, good luck getting off that list. And
fuck, pardon me.
No, that's all right. I mean, it makes you want to, it makes you want to swear, that's for sure.
No, I mean, you can look at it on the lower level, man. I know people that have been busted for drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, marijuana, if you want to call that.
Yeah, sure.
but
if
I know
you want to call that a drug, yeah, I gotcha.
But and I also know people that have been busted for, you know, cocaine, stuff like that.
Sure.
And I'm going to use, and there are very similar situations where they say, well, if you just help us out, we'll drop your charge. And then, you know, I'll be honest, if I hear this, it's like, okay, you didn't need to tell me that, prank caller.
Prank caller, yes.
But I've talked to some of them, you know, not recently, but in the past few years. And they have used this against them. It's like, well, you helped us out, man. You know, you were talking about taxes. You know, you helped us out. We need you to help us out again. You wouldn't want anybody to
find out you didn't pay taxes on that. Yeah.
Same thing. Hey, as a bug, I can do these things.
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing an all-out assault on our civil liberties, and it really, in my opinion, started in earnest with the Patriot Act, Susan, as you well know, and is continuing on now with these false flag shootings, and it's just, you know, it's appalling. I don't know how else to describe it. And the problem being, though, is you have so many brainwashed sheeple, as we like to call them on this show, that have bought into this. I mean, even people here in North Dakota who are traditionally conservative and suspect of the government that are saying, well, yeah, I don't understand why we have to have, you know, over 10-round magazines, and I don't understand. Well, that's because that's what the government has. They're not using muskets anymore. This isn't 1776, okay?
Yeah.
You know, you have to have something that's somewhat close to what they're going to use against you.
Well, look at what Governor Cuomo, what did he say? You don't need 10 rounds to go hunting for a deer.
Right.
I don't think that's what the Second Amendment was about, but
yeah, that's right. That's right.
And also, Second Amendment. Right. People talk about bearing arms. People have to understand that back during the Revolutionary days, they did have armories, and they suddenly started to realize during that Revolutionary War that if your armory is to the east 10 miles, and where the British is attacking, 10 miles to the east, and where the British are attacking is 15 miles to the west, you're going to have to basically hike 35 miles to be able to take care of it. So you needed a gun in every house. You know, they knew that.
That's right. Well, the thing is, we're at a stage where the government is doing this. This is not conspiracy paranoia. The government is arming itself for the single purpose of taking on the American people. The government is training for martial law. They say they're training for martial law. They have the Department of Homeland Security has a manual for how to conduct NDAA and how to round up all the usual suspects. That would be us,
right?
And how to lock us up and run the prisons without putting us on trial, and how they're going to try to use loud music to break our spirits, and how, you know, if they put Lawrence Welk on, I think I'll kill somebody.
That's what they did in Waco when they broke these people down.
Yes, but they're talking about doing it. I would be if you know the idea that they even could conceive of it shows that we're not paranoid, because they're planning it. They're aggressively, actively planning this stuff. They're getting it all ready. They're laying it out. And what's going to happen is one day we're going to wake up and America's going to be gone. And they're going to say, hey, guess what, guys? All those laws that we've been putting on the books for the past 10 years, they're now in play. You know, say goodbye to your civil liberties. You weren't using those rights anyway. What do you need them for? You're not using them. And that's what I'm worried about.
Right. Yeah, and that's what's coming. I mean, one day there's going to be an announcement that we're under martial law, and it's going to be because of another false flag or multiple false flags. And we need martial law in order to round up all these crazy gun owners like Alex Jones and whoever else they decide to demonize on the mainstream media.
And yeah. So, listen, you guys, this has been a great show. This really has. And I'm really glad that you invited me on, and we've covered a lot of territory. And
yes,
I think that we're ending it at a good moment, because, or a sad moment, where we have to really look at where our country's going. And you know, people who think that the Patriot Act is only about foreign terrorism don't know that it's about whistleblowers. It's about, you know, attacking people who free speech. Free speech is the new sedition, and it has nothing to do with advocating violent overthrow of the United States. No, none of us are advocating the violent overthrow of the United States. We're worried the United States is going to try to overthrow us.
Right.
Violent overthrow and bullets.
Yes, they're going to try to overthrow us. We're not going to try to overthrow them, and that's where we have to defend ourselves.
You are making an impact. Let me just say, you can always see on the web when people are making an impact. And like I said, I've watched most all your videos I found online. And before there's a guest that comes on, I always watch them again. Luckily we've been under the deluge today with the rain here, and I didn't have to go to work because I work outside. So I watched a bunch of them. Let me say, I can tell when people are making an impact on the web is when you start seeing the trolls on the videos posting comments saying that you're a shill. You're a shill.
Yeah.
You're and I've told Johnny before, you're right on. And that's why earlier in the show I was asking you, because, like I said, my thing is with history, and you did connect a whole lot of dots tonight for me.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad, because we are making a huge mistake. We are raising to power the Islamic radicals who have been fighting us all over the world, and we are not supporting moderate Islamists. We're supporting the most extreme, and we're throwing out the secular. We're throwing out governments that are holding back the tide on these radical forces. That's why they want them out. That's why the radicals are against them, is because the secular governments are controlling their movement and mobility, and maybe for good reason is what I'm afraid of. So I really do hope that Americans will. I'm disappointed in the anti-war community that they're willing to tolerate. They attacked George Bush for Iraq, which was a good thing to do, but they're willing to support Obama's attack on Syria and Libya, and that's just wrong.
And all the drone attacks.
The drone attacks. Oh, God.
Inhumane in the extreme definition of the word.
Yes.
I believe.
And if George Bush had done it, we would be screaming for war crimes trials. But the liberals don't want to go after Obama, and it's just, we're making a mess here, and we're going to have to,
They're afraid of
Iran and Syria Iran is very happy to see the Islamic forces come in, because they can figure out a way to dialogue with those people.
Yep.
And that dialogue is guaranteed to shut us out.
That's right. That's right. And Susan, why don't you go ahead and remind everybody, and maybe the new listeners we have out there today, what the name of your book is?
Oh, yes. My book is Extreme Prejudice, The Terrifying Story of the Patriot Act and the Cover-Ups of 9/11 in Iraq. Please get that on Amazon and Kindle. It's done very well, and it shows a whole new perspective on false flag terrorism and the Patriot Act that will break your heart.
Yep, and raise the hair on the back of your neck. I can tell you that.
And raise the hair on your back of your neck, yes.
When I first read the book, that's when I contacted you, because I was like, wow. I mean, that was one of the few books that I've ever actually had to slow down and go backwards and make sure that I'd actually read what I'd read. So yeah. I highly recommend it. People want to know the truth about what's really going on with our government and with our foreign policy. That book is right on.
Yeah, Extreme Prejudice. Please check it out. Absolutely.
Well, Susan, as always, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time out.
I'm glad we got to talk about gun rights, too, and the Oath Keepers and the real pressure we're under. This is a lot more insidious than anybody realizes. And our democracy is really we have to defend it right now. We have to stand up and face what's happening to us. We can't afford to put our heads under the sand like an ostrich. We gotta face this thing. We gotta fight it back, because if we don't fight back, and that doesn't mean violent fighting back, but verbal fighting, verbal sparring is the way to go. And call them on it and let them know we're not fooled for a minute.
Right.
That's the best way to protect our country.
You are the person to tell the sheeple about fighting back, because you've done it. And Susan Lindauer, you are a true patriot, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good night.
All right, you too. Thanks so much again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was Susan Lindauer, author of Extreme Prejudice, The Cover-Ups of 9/11 in Iraq, and The Terrifying Story of the Patriot Act, which, boy, she covers a lot of ground in that book. I don't know if you've ever read it, Bob, but I
haven't.
If you've watched all the videos, you know what the book says anyway.
Right. I'm gonna get it though. I'm definitely gonna go on Amazon and get it, and we're actually we'll throw that one up on the site too. We'll put a link to that.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, why not? All right. Well, we're about down to the wire. Anything else that we need to promote tonight?
No more business on the agenda, man.
Okay. Well, make sure people are listening. Go to wakingupthemasses.com. Check out our new website where you can find our blogs. You can find other 24. I think we got a 24/7 news feed up and running now, don't we? Or
oh yeah, man. People can check out. There's archives there. The most recent archives from my show, from your show. This one will be up here in a few minutes, and also in between, you get some Bill Cooper for you.
That's right. I forgot about that. Awesome.
The pre-match ceremonies.
And then yeah, exactly. And then watch out for the new iPhone app coming out very soon.
Yes, sir. We'll have our app page up in the next few days, and people can get the Android, iPhone app, and get it in their cars. That's what you need. They need you and I talking to them in their car.
Yeah, instead of Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck.
Oh, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Bob, thanks for joining me once again, and it's good to be back on the air with you again, and
definitely.
As partners in crime this time.
Yes. Well, man, I guess we should go out the same way we came in. We'll play our new intro.
Sounds good. I'll click on it now, and we'll see you next time right here on Waking Up the Masses.
Zombie-like slumber to see the truth, for the truth will make us free. You are listening to Waking Up the Masses Radio.